Good morning. That's it. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of New Bern. As we get started, we offer a gentle reminder to please put your electronic devices in worship mode. I am Stan Allen. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm very happy to be your service leader today. Today we continue the Another Plaque on the Wall. I was thinking I would sing that part, but I couldn't remember the tune for the brick song. As we learn more about the faith traditions represented on our wall behind me, the focus today is special to me because it is on our Dharma wheel plaque, the one in the center on the top. It was created by Stephen Greer, but a word went out for the artists in the congregation to volunteer to make plaques to put on the wall. And Steve went for the Buddhism plaque. At that time, we were having meditation at my house, New Bern Sangha, and so everybody was in kind of a Buddhist mood. At that time, I had a stamp that I had gotten online showing the Buddha Dharma wheel, and when I bought an art book, I would sign my name and the date and then stamp it. And Steve liked that, so that was his model for doing this. When I was thinking about these plaques, and now that they're all here, let me take a quick look at them. I think that one's quite different from all the others. Most of these are symbols of religion, but the Buddhist plaque really is kind of a roadmap. In the middle, on this one up here, you'll see three spirals. It's not that way on your program, but that represents the Buddha, the Buddha's teachings, or the Dharma, and the Sangha, the community of Buddhists. Then there's the Noble Eightfold Path, the spokes of the wheel. Sometimes I can say them all and sometimes I can't, so I'm going to read them. Up at the top, there's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So if you've ever been in a temple in Thailand or another Buddhist country, you'll often see a monk seated and people sitting around him in a circle, not many, just a few, 2 or 3, 5 or 6, and he'll be explaining in detail these spokes. I thought of some stories to tell about it, but I think I'll pass. But anyway, this is the meaning of the Buddhist plaque there. It's the wheel of the Dharma, and it commemorates the time the Buddhist set his first sermon in the Deer Grove and set the whole wheel of the law in motion.
My mom had the absolute worst sounding alarm clock. It was like that. Bah, 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 like it would give you a panic attack. You could hear it all over the house when it went off. It was terrible. My palms get sweaty just thinking about it. Lew Wallace was a French inventor who invented the first mechanical alarm clock in 1847. But the snooze button wouldn't make it into the world until 1956. I was 20 years old the first time I ever heard anyone talk about the No Snooze Club. We were bemoaning the 4 a.m. wake-up calls at the North Carolina Justice Academy. More on that later. And my dorm mate, Courtney, talked about a girlfriend she had dated a few years before who never hit snooze. Courtney's girlfriend had an alarm clock that was ducks quacking very loudly. Courtney said the first time she stayed over, the ducks went off, and she, in confusion, sat up, groggy, looking like a gremlin. Meanwhile, her girlfriend sits up like a Disney princess and stretches and yawns like everything is normal. Courtney was not impressed. While I'm not the level of Courtney's girlfriend, I generally consider myself a morning person. But I do hit the snooze a few times most mornings. I tend to believe that the Buddha would have been a member of the No Snooze Club. Up until his enlightenment, he was relentless in pursuit of waking up. He desperately wanted to be awake spiritually. And once he finally achieved it, the Buddha created his own version of an alarm clock. Now, I could go in a direction of a steering wheel or a boat's wheel. In fact, I really wanted to do that because it just lends itself to that appearance, right? But we're staying with alarm clocks, so come with me. The Dharma wheel is meant to steer us each in the right direction toward enlightenment. Each spoke on the wheel, which Stan so beautifully took pieces of my presentation. Each spoke on the wheel represents one of the ways for us to wake up. The first spoke on the wheel speaks of right understanding. I believe all of the spokes on the wheel take courage, but this one especially. Right understanding means being pragmatic in our understanding of the world, being willing to see things as they truly are, and not through rose-colored glasses even. Being willing to look on suffering and change and look it in the face and not turn away. The second spoke represents right intent. And this one builds on right understanding by awakening us to keep our intentions at the forefront of our minds. Because we see suffering, we are driven to do good in the world, to renounce excess and greed, and to embrace kindness and selflessness. The third spoke is right speech, calling us to use our words as a force for good, to awaken to the understanding that if we are not careful, our words can cause suffering. The fourth spoke is right action, which takes the right thoughts and the right words to the next step. It's a responsibility to be ethical in our actions. And building on our actions, the fifth spoke is right livelihood, which awakens us to the idea that what we do for work matters, and an ideal job helps and does not harm people, animals, and the planet. The sixth spoke is right effort. This one is about balance, and as a Libra, I really love that. It's asking us to wake up to find sustainable effort that we can put forth each day into the world. Sustainable in that it's the amount that we can give each day without harming ourselves, not too little so that we're not taking any action at all, and not too much so that we don't exhaust ourselves. The seventh spoke is right mindfulness. Not to be confused with right thoughts, where right thoughts or right intention is meant to remind us of why we are being who we are. Right mindfulness is about self-awareness, awakening us to the awareness of the body, of the breath, of the emotions that we feel. When we have a greater sense of self-awareness, we can be less reactionary when difficult moments happen. And once we have mastered right mindfulness, we can move on to the eighth spoke, which is right concentration or meditation. And this is about training our minds to focus on a single aspect of our being. Sometimes the breath, sometimes something else. It's like a spotlight being put on this one thing, to not be distracted by all the other things. Where mindfulness encourages us to be observers of many aspects, concentration calls us to focus on just one. And this spoke reminds me of those pictures that look kind of like a blurry mess, but if you stare in just that one spot in the center, an image will appear. They never work for me. I think it's a scam. Y'all are all in a conspiracy telling me that that's real, but I don't believe it. It's not real. Anyway, right concentration calls us to awaken by calling us to focus on a single thing. Nowadays, they have these new alarm clocks called progressive alarms, and so they start really quiet and they slowly get a little bit louder over like a course of like 5 to 10 minutes. And some of them will also turn the lights on slowly, so from like a dimmer switch and up. And that's what I think the Dharma wheel is, right? You start on the first spoke and you just slowly go around until you're awake. If we set these alarms ourselves, maybe we too can wake up. That's the goal of enlightenment, to wake up to the possibilities of a world where suffering has less power, where there's less hatred and more kindness and more love, where there's less greed and more sharing. And even when we create that world, to continue back around the wheel, aware of the suffering, continuing of what does exist through each spoke again. In the 1860s, before the alarm clock, or the snooze button at least, a group called the Wide Awakes held marches, which were meant to awaken people to what was happening in the country. They were abolitionists who offered a sense of community to young people and got them engaged in the state of the world. Since that time, being awake has been seen as a threat to power. It's a threat to the status quo if we refuse to allow ourselves to be distracted or consumed by our own self-interests. If we refuse to ignore our connectedness to one another, if we refuse to be divided, we are a threat to greed and power. And so they rebranded awake to being woke, which has become an insult hurled at anyone who had the audacity to think of someone other than themselves. Anything that isn't self-serving, that doesn't lend itself to the capitalist mindset of acquiring more, has become a sign of weakness. If we love people as they are, queer folks and straight folks, cis folks and trans folks, it's woke. If we care for the stranger and the immigrant, it's woke. If we seek out people who don't look like us so that we can love them and work to make the world better for all, it's woke. If we invest in gender equality or commit to learn fact-based history, it's woke. Even if we care about the climate, it's woke. Truly, anything that centers another that is inconvenient to the self-serving of one's own interests is woke. And I want to be clear that none of this is political. It's not political. This is about morals. This is about our morals. Buddha definitely would have been considered woke, as would Jesus, Muhammad, Buffalo Woman, and Krishna. So perhaps we're in good company if we joined the No Snooze Club too and committed to being awake. It's certainly easier to hit snooze and stay in our cozy beds than it is to force ourselves out into the discomfort of the world. But I would argue that isn't for this group. Our family presently has the live equivalent of the quack alarm clock, but it's a cat. One of our rescue cats, his name is Locke, L-O-C-H, is deaf, and he has wobbly cat syndrome. So his head's always a little crooked and he's stumbly. It's kind of cute. He looks drunk all the time. But every single morning at 6 a.m., Locke scream meows at the top of his lungs. And he does not stop until I wake up. I used to throw a small pillow at him, a throw pillow, if you will. But he got smart, and he will now hide behind something and scream meow so that I can't hit him with the pillow. He has food, he has water, he just screams at us because he thinks it's time to get up. He wants everyone else to wake up. And while the Buddha may not have screamed it at what turns out to be 5 a.m. during daylight savings time, I think that is the call of the Buddha. May we all find ourselves awakened and embrace that label that's hurled at us. In the coming weeks, you're going to hear several invitations, but one specific one, and you'll know which one. To be wide awake to the world that could begin to change at the beginning of next year. I want to say that again. To be wide awake to the world that could begin to change at the end of next month. This will be a chance not to turn away, a chance to keep our heads out of the sand and to be prepared for what's to come. And I hope that you'll accept that invitation, even if it means being woke. Because despite what some may want you to believe, woke is not an insult. Blessed be.
Every time I've seen the phrase or the word woke, I've wondered, what does that mean? I've never heard anybody use it except, But now I know, and I'm ready to go make myself a t-shirt, woke and proud. Been woke the whole time, didn't even know. Thank you, Mary.